CityCast Pittsburgh is supported by Fulton Commons. If you're looking for a gorgeous co-working space with lots of light and some truly wonderfully funky decor, check out Fulton Commons on the north side. The historic but very well renovated old school building is deep in the neighborhood by a park, tucked away but still super close to anywhere you want to be. They've got offices and common spaces. It's perfect for organizations or individuals, and they even have a shared food production kitchen on site. So there's lots of food-related events for their members. If this sounds like your dream co-working space, visit fultonpgh.org to request a tour. Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, a raid at a beloved bar on Balm Boulevard left its community pretty shaken up. We're in the last stretch of a mayoral primary, and it's just getting kind of spicy. And a famous Andy Warhol print seems to have ended up in the trash. I am with CityCast's Mallory Falk and Sophia Lowe talking about some of the biggest stories of the week. It's Friday, May 9th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. Sophia, Mallory, hello. Let's get into the news.
Yes. Good morning. Hello. We'll kick it off with the raid on P-Town last weekend.
We're think that's starting bleak. It's so bad.
It is a little bleak, but I think this is something that people have been talking about all throughout the week. And before we dive into all of those responses, I just want to recap what happened on that night. So over the weekend, 20 police officers showed up at P-Town during another Pittsburgh party. It's a recurring event that happens there. And the event was hosted by a local drag queen, Indica, and Amanda Lepore, super famous in the nightlife scene, was one of the guest performers. So during this show, police asked everyone to leave and told folks it was a compliance check. At the time, not a ton of details about why they were there. And then people ended up waiting outside for about 30 minutes, rainy, not fun weather, and then not everyone was let back in. Q-Burg was like the first outlet that I saw publish this. Their framing was kind of like, the police came here, but there was still queer joy because while they were outside, Indica performed Pink Pony Club on the sidewalk. A lot of people joined in. Like, it really seemed.
There were so many videos. Like, it really, like, I am with you, Sophia. I think it was just like such like a moment, you know?
Like, it really seemed like this was trying to make the best of a really confusing and could be like scary situation.
And also like a little bit of resistance too, because like there was some clear animosity between folks standing outside and like having to just be stared at by a bunch of police officers.
Exactly.
Well, and according to Q-Burg, also, like when the police showed up, a performer was in the middle of a theatrical rendition of Bohemian Rhapsody and actually kept going. Like, law enforcement, according to this article, had to stand back and wait until the performance was over, which is a detail I truly love.
What a song, too. Like, of all the things they could have been doing, it's incredible.
Yeah. So, Sophia, you mentioned lots of people have been talking about this. This got a lot of attention, and to the degree where Mayor Ed Gainey actually put out a statement about this, responded. So he said that the reason the police showed up was in response to a complaint about overcrowding, that someone had made a report to the city's Bureau of Police asking for a check on overcrowding. And so according to Gainey, when they did perform this check, the venue was over capacity. In his statement, he said P-Town has an occupancy permit for 70 people and there were 133 inside.
I didn't realize the occupancy limit was that small. Like, I have been to events at P-Town, definitely more than 70 people. Like, some maybe outside, some inside.
But P-Town has also put out a statement since then, too, talking about that. Like, they had some renovation work done before and during the pandemic. And since then, they've been waiting on their rezoning to come through. Like, they applied for a permit to get a new number applied to their current footprint. But that hasn't happened. And they just figured like, oh, they must be behind. Like, they'll get to us eventually, which I think is like so Pittsburgh nice. But now it seems like, no, they actually are going to need some help getting this permit through.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that struck me about Gainey's statement was he talked about how it's, his job as mayor to make sure patrons are safe and that safety rules are enforced. But he also acknowledged kind of the historical harm that's been done to queer communities gathering in spaces like this. Like he talked about the Stonewall Inn, the fact that it wasn't very long ago that police raids at gay bars were routine. He didn't mention the current political moment we're in, but I'm sure that's top of mind for everybody, that we are in a moment where these spaces are under attack. The people gathering in these spaces are under attack. But he did at least acknowledge kind of the historical trauma that shaped how people responded to this raid.
Well, I also know that, the Liquor Control Board was also involved in this. So how much of a role does Gainey have to play over this specific incident and how it shook out?
Well, sort of. So I did try to find some context about how these enforcement checks actually go. So looking at the state level, liquor licensing and liquor enforcement are apparently handled by two different agencies. So the Liquor Control Board, like the overseers of our fine wine and good spirits, they only handle licenses, like issuing them, maintaining them. But the state police's Bureau of Liquor Control Enforcement are the ones that do the checks. So that's why all the folks you saw in the videos, standing outside, they were mostly state police.
Right.
They're the ones that come into bars and who step in for this nuisance bar program, which Gainey also talked about. That was part of the checking on overcrowding. I guess that program's been around since 1990, and they can do checks on all kinds of things. But it's not strictly the Liquor Control Board. It's the state police and this independent version of it.
Which I imagine also contributes to how terrifying this moment is, because it's not just any type of officer or official coming. State police feels so serious. And the reporting I saw said they were showing up in bulletproof vests. Just imagining that level of response seems so extreme for this kind of gathering.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, Gainey said he was going to ask our acting city police chief and the city's public safety director, so the police chief's boss, to review the incident. I don't know if Pittsburgh police have any authority over our state police. I'm going to guess no, but they said they're going to review the incident and the way that the task force is operating overall. Maybe here in Pittsburgh writ large, I'm not sure, to make sure that it's done with, sensitivity to historical trauma. And if needed, maybe some additional safeguards will get put in place. I do know anytime state police respond to anything like this, often they will pull in a Pittsburgh police officer or two, to help pad the ranks. It can be a multi-agency thing. So it's possible that we would be able to affect change in this way if it turns out that something was done without the level of sensitivity that was necessary.
Well, and P-Town made a statement about this whole thing. They said that no officers harassed any attendees. As far as they know, no one did anything unprofessional. P-Town also said they weren't really sure why their venue was chosen for inspection, but they said that they're going to, work a little harder to get that new permit. And they also put out a call asking for people, if you've got any expertise in permitting or codes, for help, just to kind of expedite this.
I know. Zoning is so complicated. We've learned a lot about that over the last year here on CityCast Pittsburgh. But I'm glad P-Town's reaching out to the community. If you know anybody, please tell them to come help us.
Yeah. And then another Pittsburgh response, Scissor. It's this sapphic party that's organized by Most Beautifulest. They had a party scheduled for P-Town this weekend, but they are moving it to Spirit. Their statement's pretty detailed, but some of the important things, I think, was they were saying that P-Town isn't unsafe, but for their Scissor parties, way more than 70 people show up. And they acknowledge that it is a very scary moment. It's okay for some of their attendees to be a little on edge or feel nervous because of this incident, especially because a lot of the attendees at Scissor are BIPOC, women, trans, all groups of people who are being targeted by the Trump administration. So if that's a party that you follow, they are at Spirit, like I said, this weekend, and kind of figuring out what their next moves are because P-Town was their new location.
One of the things I've noticed is that this story hasn't just stayed within Pittsburgh. It's getting some larger coverage.
Oh, yeah. I have seen this in Them, Pink News, people outside of Pittsburgh. My friends on social media are sharing this. I've seen this pop up on TikTok by strangers that I don't follow. So it is getting a lot bigger. The articles that I've read are pretty straight debriefs. They're pretty similar to the Kuberg article, incorporating Gainey statements, P-Town statements. What stood out to me was the reaction from folks, in comment sections, all of that. Some people were like, oh, it was about occupancy. Nothing happened. No big deal. While other people are really focused on that historical harm, fear about what policing queer communities could look like in the future. Like some people pointed out that there had been like things like kind of similar to like compliance checks where police have kind of gone into bars with trans people to see if people were wearing like clothing that is aligned with like the gender they were assigned at birth.
What?
Well, that's historic, not like currently.
Got it. Oh my God, Sophie, my whole heart. Yeah, I mean, I also think like when you step back, I just wonder how we ended up with a system that involves like coming in for an occupancy check with bulletproof vests.
And 20 police officers. If the problem is occupancy, like
why are you adding more bodies?
Yeah, exactly. So I think there are a lot of questions about like what a police response should look like to this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I can imagine potentially like at some of the rowdier bars, maybe there's a fear that things might escalate. But if this is just the standard response to like checking occupancy, you end up with a situation like this, where a community that's already on edge, that's already under attack, is having this interaction that makes them feel significantly less safe.
And so just to kind of look forward a little bit, you know, like, so apparently someone called in this overcrowding check. They've now apparently failed that check. And in P-Town's statement, they say like the folks that came in found some areas for improvement. They're going to work really hard on those. They're going to get their new permit. But I do wonder what comes next because, you know, we've got the Liquor Control Board, which issues the licenses, and the state police, which do the checks. But there's actually a third and fourth entity. Of course, there is Pennsylvania. That steps in on stuff like this. So if the state police issue citations, I don't know if they did in this case, but it sounds like at least they were over their capacity. That can trigger the Liquor Control Board to not renew a bar's liquor license, which would shut down P-Town if that happened. It can also get kicked to the Office of an Administrative Law Judge. That's through the U.S. Department of Labor. That can also get their license revoked. And if that happens, if the worst happens, then the bar can appeal. So they can go to our local court of common pleas. But whatever happens there, like here at the local level, that is final. So if their license were to be revoked for some reason, and then, you know, or a law judge stepped in and revoked it that way, it gets really serious really fast. And as a small business owner, like if your business is closed for any amount of time, you can really be in a pickle quick.
Totally. Well, we're not quite there yet, but we will keep an eye for any more updates on this.
Well, moving on to this week's trivia question, we've got a special Mother's Day edition celebrating the mom of an iconic local artist who we are also going to talk about a little later in the show, Andy Warhol. His mom, Julia Warhola, contributed to his art, but what did she contribute?
I have no idea. My best guess is a striking fashion sense and cynicism about consumerism. I don't have a clue.
I'm going to guess baby teeth. I don't think like Andy Warhol's art is like that like tactile in terms of using like, I don't know, like 3D stuff. But I don't know, like some moms keep their like the baby teeth or I don't know, hair, maybe.
Then again, Andy Warhol kept everything. The archives over at the Warhol Museum are nuts.
Maybe there's a drawer full of teeth in there.
There could be.
Well, we will have the answer after the break.
Today's show is supported by Liberty Magic, presenting Joshua J. in the upcoming show, Making Magic. You can check it all out through June 7th. You know, magicians don't usually reveal their secrets. It's sort of the thing. But Joshua takes his audience behind the curtain, so you can actually see how the tricks get developed. He's bringing new magic to his debut at Liberty Magic here in Pittsburgh, and he's going to be dazzling us by blending storytelling with sleight of hand. You might have actually seen him before. He designed illusions for Game of Thrones. He's made appearances on late night TV. He's even actually fooled the experts, Penn and Teller. So if you are feeling truly adventurous, you want to get up close, try to figure out the tricks for yourself, you can upgrade your ticket to the Skeleton VIP experience. You get closer to the stage and a post-show meet and greet. Liberty Magic's shows truly offer you a one-of-a-kind experience, super easy to access, but hard to forget. Get your tickets at trustarts.org/magic before they disappear. Today's show is brought to you by Aura Home. This Mother's Day, don't just tell the moms in your life how much you love them. Share what's going on in your world in a way that can stick with them for years to come. I've got a cousin. She is older than me, kind of an aunt, really, and we haven't lived in the same city in almost 20 years, but I want her to know me and the family that I have found here in Pittsburgh. So she got an Aura frame a while back, and it has fully changed how we talk to each other. So I send her frame pictures of my kid, who she's only met in person like 2 or 3 times, but she knows exactly when he took his first step, what color his favorite cars are, and that when he is up to something, he looks exactly like our grandfather. It keeps us connected in this really special way, and I'm so grateful for it because it has nothing to do with social media. Aura's Carver frame was Wirecutter's #1 pick for a digital photo frame, and you've probably seen it in a bunch of other gift guides. So if you have not gotten one yet, now is the time, because Aura has a great deal for Mother's Day. For a limited time, listeners to this show can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off plus free shipping on their best-selling Carver matte frame. That's Aura, A-U-R-A, frames.com, promo code CityCast. Please support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply.
We are back, and Sophia, I'm sorry, you are incorrect. Andy Warhol's mother did not contribute his baby teeth to his artwork.
I kind of figured, but I just wanted to believe.
But what about, fashion, anything like that? Like, I'm imagining Mr. Rogers and how his mom made him sweaters, you know?
That's very sweet, but this is not a physical, tactile thing. She contributed handwriting. She was very talented at calligraphy, and so a lot of the letters and some of the signatures in his work were actually by her hand.
Oh, that's really cool.
That's actually kind of sweet. I like all these Pittsburgh dudes like incorporating their moms into their art. That's great.
And actually, if you want to learn more about Andy Warhol's mom in particular, there's a book that came out late last year from the University of Pittsburgh Press called Andy Warhol's Mother. That's all about her own story and how she influenced her son's art. So definitely check that out.
So we'll move on to our next topic. We're going to catch up on the mayor's race. Of course, that's coming up on May 20th, the primary election, which in recent history, and by recent, I mean the last century, usually the primary is when we know who's going to be mayor, because it tends to be among Democrats. But we do have 4 candidates. If you're new to the show, we've got 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. We have interviewed them all recently on consecutive Mondays, so we'll have links in our show notes to those.
So we're going to go through a few of the latest developments, the stories that have been getting some circulation. One in particular that's gotten a lot of coverage recently is related to group chats. I feel like if we've learned anything over the past few months, it's that people have to be a little bit more judicious with their group chats.
I'm not a public official or anyone that important, but group chats are my lifeline. I do all of my organizing in my group chats. Like, my group chats are an archive.
Which makes sense until you're running for office.
Yeah, so the story here, if you missed it, there's been a lot of coverage about Mayor Gainey's group chat in particular. It's not a group chat he's in, but it's made up of some of his supporters. So that includes campaign workers, but also a couple of his aides, some city council members who've endorsed him, plus leaders of a group that did an advertising campaign for Gainey, the Working Families Party. So some other council members who notably weren't part of the chat, they back Corey O'Connor, Gainey's challenger. They have raised concerns that the chat's being used to coordinate campaign messaging and talking points. In response, several of the city officials who are part of the chat told WESA, what's happening in there is par for the course. They've been maintaining a division between city work and their support for Gainey, and that they're not doing campaigning work when they're in their official capacity.
I mean, my read on this, though, is that it might sometimes be done, but that doesn't mean that how it's being done is always strictly legal. You cannot campaign during taxpayer-funded time or using taxpayer-funded resources. For example, which phones were they using to do this? Are they paid for by the city? You can't get squishy with that rules, because that's just sort of a slippery slope. For what it's worth, Deputy Mayor Jake Pollock says that they are not doing any of this. They're not crossing any of these lines, but it is such a fine line. And from all reports, this group chat is kind of large, and there are supposed to be checks and balances on this stuff. If you've got campaign staff, city officials, people from our foundation and nonprofit community who sometimes need to go before council to ask for things, all in cahoots about something. I don't know. At minimum, it feels messy. And at some point, I feel like something like this is going to get challenged in court. Like maybe not in Pittsburgh, maybe not right now, but like this feels like the kind of thing that's coming at some point.
I mean, I get the thing about not using taxpayer resources, not being on taxpayer time, but like at the end of the day, we're all using group chats in some way to communicate with each other. So I feel like it is going to be like super hard to draw those lines when it does get to like a court case.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that it'll be hard to figure out what's legal and what's not. But like the difference is that you and I aren't running for office. Like if you're gonna run for office, there's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of stuff you have to not do.
It just sounds so ridiculous as like a normal person. Like, you know, for a lot of people, our jobs, we're like texting people. We don't normally have to think about that kind of stuff that people running for office or officials do.
I don't know. I've been texting a fair number of folks that are like either elected office or elected office adjacent. And so many times I text them a question and they call me because they understand that if they put something in writing, that then becomes RTKable. Like I can ask for it because it's a public record.
For the non-journalists out there, you can then submit to get a record of that exchange.
Yeah, so they know that it's a little bit of a risk to put anything in writing like this. And actually, to that point, to that question of who can and cannot be in a group chat, what's legal and what's not, I think one of the big open questions, at least to some reporters in town, is the inclusion of the Working Families Party that you mentioned, Mallory. According to reporting, they are in the group chat. Ashley Komen specifically, according to her LinkedIn, she's the Western Pennsylvania political director. She's run for office a couple of times herself. But part of that organization, part of the party, is this thing called an independent expenditure group. And it's not bound by the same campaign contribution limits, so they can take in a lot more money, which means absolutely no collaborating with the campaign. And from what we've read, they've been doing a boatload of advertising on behalf of Gainey.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that name floating around.
Same.
Yeah, and from what I was reading in WESA, which kind of gets into all this, the Working Families Party says they have two different arms. So there's the independent expenditure group, and there is also a political arm, and that there's a division between these two, and the political half can talk to the campaign. Like WESA says, that is permitted by federal law as long as there is a firewall between the two sides. But to be honest, I am not an expert on political campaigning rules. So definitely check out this WESA article if you want it broken down more. We will drop a link to that in our show notes.
Yeah, and I mean, I leave it to the political reporters here in town to try and decipher all of this. But this morning, I'm reading all this reporting and it hits me. I'm thinking about when we went to go talk to Mayor Gainey for our Mayoral Monday series, because we met him over at his office, his headquarters in Point Breeze. And as we're leaving, the person sitting at the door at a desk, stuff spread out everywhere, was Ashley Komen.
Right. And she's like the first person you see when you come in, last person you see when you walk out.
Yeah, right in front of the door, which is why we got to talking to her as we walked by. It was just friendly. But I did not clock in that moment who she was, a person who's run for office, who's working with the Working Families group and is seemingly also working with the Gainey campaign.
I mean, to me, the thing that I feel like is interesting about this whole story kind of blowing up is it shows how divided city council is right now in their endorsements of these candidates. Because remember, this generated from several members of council backing O'Connor, raising concerns about this chat. And, you know, last time around in the last mayoral primary, everyone was pretty much in lockstep. Like all of the council members endorsed the same primary candidate, then Mayor Bill Peduto. Deb Gross was the only one who backed Gainey. And now there's just much more of a division on council. And there are moments where it seems like it's gotten kind of contentious. And it's part of why I think we're not going to see movement on some of the big issues and proposals the city is considering right now, like inclusionary zoning, which we've talked about a bunch on the show, until after the primary. I mean, and some of that is also just smart because you don't want to lock things into place until you know who's going to be in charge next and whether they support the policies. But to me, one of the big takeaways is just like city council is so divided now in who they're supporting and how they're going about sharing that support.
So we'll move on to another recap moment. This one popped a couple of weeks ago now, but Pittsburgh's police union is asking Mayor Gainey to remove his chief operating officer. So that's Lisa Frank, also allegedly in the group chat. But they want Frank out before the city and the police union negotiate the 2026 union contract. She's had the post, I think, the entire time Mayor Gainey's been in office.
So in a letter to the mayor, the police union cited mostly Facebook posts that Frank put up in 2020 about defunding the police. And of course, this was also during the height of the George Floyd protests. She questions, quote, "Why do we continue to fund these police departments?"
Yeah, another one, there was a link to an article about police violence. She wrote, quote, "It's time to abolish them," end quote, seemingly referring to police departments. Frank says her views have since changed. And I guess whether you agree with her sentiments or not, past or present, I do sort of see how the police union can argue that this isn't maybe a fair arbiter of their upcoming contract. I think they're also salty because they wanted to meet months ago about this new contract. They had a meeting set months out. And then like the day before or something, that meeting was supposed to happen. The city was like canceled, not rescheduling yet. So the union was just salty from the jump.
The cancellation would annoy me, but like I don't really get why the police union would think that someone negotiating with them might see completely eye to eye with them. In my experiences with union contracts, like you don't really like the person you're negotiating with necessarily, and like you aren't expecting them to give you everything you want. Like that's not how those go.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I think this is also like sort of a moment where like, why do people in public office not scrub their social profiles like Twitter or Facebook? Like it is just not prudent to leave an accessible public record of every hot take that you have ever had on the internet.
I think hot takes are fun for Reddit. I love judging people anonymously on Reddit.
And I love them, but like they should have a shelf life. Like maybe get rid of that a year later or something. I don't know.
That's what Snapchat was for.
Yeah.
Well, the Democrats are still doing their back and forth about who is funding who. Donations from Republicans or quote unquote MAGA money has been a big talking point between O'Connor and Gainey. Another thing that has been a big focal point of the race is housing. And recently, O'Connor got some criticism for leaving a housing forum early. It was hosted by Pittsburgh United, and then O'Connor ended up leaving a little earlier than the other candidates for a fundraiser.
Yeah, and the thing I saw really kind of getting traction was that, according to a screenshot from a Gainey campaign person, one of the people hosting that alleged fundraiser, that event, was Joe Calloway, who's the CEO of RE360 Property Management, which is one of those companies that if you spend a lot of time on the Pittsburgh Reddit, that's coming up a lot today, but it's one of the companies that people on there really tell renters to stay away from. So I was seeing some chatter about kind of the irony of leaving a housing forum early to go attend an event with this specific person.
Yeah, Mallory, the way I initially heard about this was from when we talked to Tony Moreno. He was throwing shade on O'Connor. He didn't mention where he went, just that he left this forum early.
And I think we were at that point where we're also just like kind of nitpicking at everything. Everyone has an opinion on something.
Well, I think it also just shows like how divided people are on the choice of Democrats right now, too.
Well, we will leave you with some good city news that is not like an integral part of the mayor's race. We have enough plumbers this year to turn on the water fountains.
Enough plumbers!
And this has been a talking point during the race. Like when we interviewed Corey O'Connor, he was kind of criticizing Gainey for this. So it is related.
Yeah, it was some hefty shade. Like, I'll make sure that we have enough plumbers, for example.
Yeah, that was his first response to why people should vote for him.
Because there was a point last year where the city only had one plumber. So a lot of the water fountains weren't open. And that plumber is also in charge of things like city pools, spray parks. That is a lot of work for one person. But the good news is that we have 4 plumbers now. One is a master's plumber who is training an apprentice. So hopefully we are good on plumbers for a long time to come. And this time they're also doing a little more documentation because like a water fountain, it's not like you just flip a switch. A lot of these are super old. Some of them are kind of complicated. They're not all the same design. So now they're taking notes about like, how to turn one on, anything that's off about it. So we're not relying on just like one person's memory anymore.
I love that was the system before. That's my favorite part.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one. Are you still quoting 30-year-old movies? Have you said cool beans in the past 90 days? Do you think Discover isn't widely accepted? If this sounds like you, you're stuck in the past. Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. And every time you make a purchase with your card, you automatically earn cash back. Welcome to the now. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/credit card, based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
Okay, so here's some other stuff that happened in Pittsburgh this week, recently. I think we're kicking one off with one that's a couple of weeks old.
And also didn't technically happen in Pittsburgh.
True. This is someone else's fault.
Yes. So we celebrated Andy Warhol and his mom earlier in the episode, but bad news for Warhol fans. A print of his, it seems like, might have ended up in the trash and probably is never going to be recoverable. So it was this silkscreen print of Queen Beatrix, the former queen of the Netherlands. And it was in this Dutch municipality. They were renovating the town hall there. And it seems like that print, along with a bunch of other art, got tossed in the trash when they were renovating the town hall. I'm saying seems like because the investigation is not entirely conclusive. We might not ever know what actually happened, but this seems like the best, most likely explanation.
I hope this is a really elaborate art heist, just because I can't imagine someone taking prints and deciding to like put them in a trash bag or like
it wasn't a trash bag. That's what I love about this. Apparently, they just took a bunch of stuff off the walls. This was the BBC's reporting, and shoved it into boxes and then put those boxes in the basement. And whoever knew what it was like wasn't present when they just decided to like clean house down there. It just threw all these boxes away.
Seems like bad practice. Whenever I clean something out, I spend like a few hours rifling through anything just in case. So
I know.
They should let me do it next time.
Well, and usually there's like insurance and stuff that comes with being like the holder of any kind of valuable art. Like, where is the insurance company in all of this?
Well, and it also makes sense, Megan, that you say these were in boxes, because I was actually reading coverage of this in the New York Times, and they talked to this independent art detective who just had some
that's a job?
He's based in Amsterdam, which...
This feels like a Sherlock joke.
But he just had some really like scathing quotes that I really enjoyed. And one of the things he said was like, doesn't everyone recognize that this is a Warhol? Like, you don't even need to know anything about art. You can see it right away.
Yes.
But I understand if it was in a box, you wouldn't necessarily see like those vibrant colors and that really distinctive style.
I guess I didn't go through it like Sophia. I don't know.
And Sophia, also to your point about hoping it's a heist, this guy agrees with you. He said, I hope someone took it. I'd be fine with that person keeping it, because that way the print is safer than with the municipality itself. Which is such a good burn.
If you're not familiar with the work, it's easily accessible on the internet. It was part of Warhol's Reigning Queens series that he did in 1985, which was right before he died. The print in question, they say, was worth like $40,000 to $50,000. So like, I get upset if I lose like a 20 or something in like a coat pocket and have to find it a year later. Like, can you imagine finding out you threw away $40,000 to $50,000 into the dumpster? Oh my gosh.
Well, and presumably more than that, because there were like around 50 pieces, I think, that got thrown away.
Whoa,
I'm sure. I don't know that any of them were as
many.
valuable as this one, but like someone really effed up.
Well, I have some good news. This one is about a professor of history. She's the director of CMU's The Humanities Center, so that's part of their Dietrich College. Her name is Etta Fields Black. She wrote a book that just won the Pulitzer Prize in the history category. It's just so cool for a local to do this. She's getting a lot of great coverage, all about a book that came out in May of last year. I don't know if I'm saying this right. It's called Combahee, Harriet Tubman, the Combahee River Raid, and Black Freedom During the Civil War. So this is about a raid in the Low Country between like Charleston and Savannah in 1863. So that would be the middle of the Civil War. And even with a bounty on her head at the time, Tubman ultimately helped 750 people liberate themselves from enslavement. Fields Black talked about how like this is just like one of the least understood or like known about periods of Tubman's like really extraordinary life. Mm-hmm. And she was looking up like all kinds of records and finding this and like figured out a way to tell this story from the perspective of the people who were able to liberate themselves and live there. I'm really excited to check this out. The full scope of the book, it sounds like it's just really detailed, like full of rich primary sources. And the really special part, I think, is like part of what sent her down this path is a family connection. So
really?
She had been researching her own genealogy when she discovered some of these war records. And she went so much further than that. But long story, very, very short, one of her ancestors participated in this raid. So Hector Fields was her great-great-great-grandfather and is part of this whole story.
Whoa. I love it when people tell stories through their family history. So this is definitely on my list too.
And also just giving voice to a group of people that traditionally are talked about, but you don't hear from them themselves.
Okay, that's definitely going to be next on my reading list. That sounds like a phenomenal book. I also have some more good news for CMU because a bunch of CMU alums were nominated for Tony Awards.
Exciting.
Which I think is kind of standard. Obviously, CMU has a really phenomenal theater program, so this is kind of par for the course for them. But so this year, 5 alums received 13 nominations for things like Best Play, Best Sound Design, Best Performance by an Actress in a Leading Role. And it looks like several of the alums who were nominated for work on Buena Vista Social Club, which is a new musical that's inspired by that album that was put together in the 90s with performances by all these different Cuban artists. So if you are in New York and want to see a show that a bunch of CMU alums were part of, you should check it out. And I really hope it makes its way to Pittsburgh at some point.
That would be really cool. I'm not sure if I'd go see it, though. Nothing against musical theater. I just have a really hard time sitting still through long performances. Usually that's why I'm waiting for movies to get on streaming so I can pause and, do my lap or get my drink.
To be honest, Buena Vista Social Club absolutely feels like a thing that's going to get made into a film at some point. I haven't seen it, but I've read some of the reviews.
You can take it in while doing your laps.
Well, we'll leave you with a few things to do this weekend and beyond. For our book friends, the Great Pittsburgh Book Crawl starts tomorrow. It's May 10th through 18th, so a long list of participating stores, a lot of bookstores that you've heard of. They all have passports, too, which I think is really cute. So if you stop into one or more, if you get a bunch of their stamps, you can be entered to win a free raffle prize.
I love a raffle.
I know, I didn't see what it was, but I feel all these bookstores have some really nice stuff in there. So I feel like if they're participating, it's going to be a good box. You know what I mean?
I think each bookstore who's participating is going to contribute something. So I think you'll get a really good mix.
I do too. And then another one, there's a banned book trivia night happening on Thursday. One of our CityCast Pittsburgh neighbors actually sent this to us, Ryan S. Thank you, Ryan. So this is a competitive fundraiser at the Carnegie Library. So the one in the South Hills. This is going to be to benefit the Reading Room, which is a nonprofit here that gives free, diverse books to kids in Allegheny County. So if you're interested in this, there are refreshments. The doors are at 6:30 and trivia is going to be at 7.
Yes, go support your local bookstores, book events. Besides stocking books, a lot of these local stores also do really cool programming, like White Whale works with the Pittsburgh Arts and Lectures. Speaking of which, Bill O'Driscoll at WESA reported that a bunch of local groups recently had their National Endowments for the Arts funding cut. So that includes what I just mentioned, Pittsburgh Arts and Lectures, but also things like the Opera, the Symphony, New Hazlitt Theater, City Theater, the Cultural Trust. I could keep going. But he did really good reporting on that. We'll have a link in the show notes. And he pointed out that these cancellation letters were sent just hours after Trump submitted a proposed budget to Congress that eliminates the NEA entirely.
Yeah, pretty confusing timing, which Bill also points out in his story. And then a couple more. Petonkatonk is back. So that's going to be Friday and Saturday. They're doing a second day this year. Snaps for that. It's kind of a global music festival. If you've never been, it is often a rainy mess. So if the weather is inclement or looks like it might be.
I think it's supposed to be nice this weekend. We never know.
We never know. Right now, it looks nice out, but who knows? But if it is rainy for any portion of it, don't let that stop you. It definitely won't stop the party. It's such a good time. Grab a blanket and pack some snacks. Kids and pets are always crawling all over the place. It is really a blast. So that's over at Vietnam Veterans Pavilion in Shenley Park. And then Saturday is also World Migratory Bird Day. So the Frick Environmental Center has a bunch of stuff going on from 7 a.m. to noon.
I know that's when birds are awake, but I am not.
So you will not see Sophia there. That is all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. Our music is by Benji, Martin Landstrom, Bagel, Joss, All the Kimonos, and additional sound from epidemicsound.com. Mallory Falk is our executive producer. Sophia Lowe and Elizabeth Kama produce the show. Francesca DeBecco writes our newsletter with help this week from Natalia Aldana. Kevin Gavin is our trivia master. And I am your host, Megan Harris. We will be back on Monday with more news from around the city. Have a great weekend, y'all.
I didn't realize there were this many rules about placentas.